Welcome to the Invested Dads Podcast, simplifying financial topics so that you can take action and make your financial situation better. Helping you to understand the current world of financial planning and investments, here are your hosts, Josh Robb and Austin Wilson.
All right. Hey, welcome back to the Invested Dads Podcast, a podcast where we take you on a journey to better your financial future. I am Austin Wilson, research analyst at Hicks & Zerker Capital Management.
And I'm Josh Robb, director of wealth management at Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. Austin, how can people help us with our podcast?
Please. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and visit our website and sign up for our weekly newsletter to get notified each and every Thursday when we send out a new episode. When those drop, we haven't missed one yet. We're like 100 and many in, 180? I don't know, something like that. So it has a nice little synopsis, summary, links to listen. Please go do that. But today, we are going to be talking about the college NIL rule.
The NIL rule.
The NIL, which is what
I don't
they
think
say.
Anybody calls it that.
It's what they say in Europe when you have 0 points in soccer or football.
NIL. Yep.
I know this because of Ted Lasso.
That's right.
Nil, as Roy would say.
Yep. So the NIL rule is the name, image, and likeness, which
also
is
known
NIL.
as NIL.
Yes, name, image, and likeness policy, which came into effect July of 2021. And that is where the NCAA allows D1, D2, and D3 student athletes to be paid for those things, name, image, and likeness.
Yep.
Whereas prior to that, they were not allowed to. So if they did an endorsement, they were on a commercial for a local car dealership, and they got something, they could get fined and disqualified from being a student athlete. So what happened was there was actually a court ruling that said, hey, universities, you make a lot of money on these people's images. They don't get anything. They should be allowed to. And states started seeing that as, oh, this is happening. So individual states started creating their own rules or laws on what was allowed or not. So the NCAA finally was like, oh, they see this coming. So they created this policy that blanketed everything that they're in charge of.
Right.
And in that, they really state that whether or not your state has a policy in place, if you're a student athlete in the NCAA, you can do this. But you're still under the state policies that they have.
Now, this applies to college only.
Correct.
One example that's coming to my mind, which was famous back about 20 years ago, was one certain young LeBron James.
Yes.
Never went to college, so this was obviously not a thing back then, but he also never had the issue because he was never a college athlete.
Yep.
However, there are some crazy stories and evidence of the things he received in high school.
Yes. And there's actually some states have rules and school districts on what a high school athlete can and can't do. So there's actually some areas where you can receive stuff or use your image.
Well, where I was from, that would have been like free corn.
Yeah. So there's a lot different there for high school. Again, that also runs into child labor laws, I'm sure, because some of them will be under 18 and not an adult. But yes, so this is just looking at college athletes that are in the NCAA system, all right? And the burden's on the athletes right now. They're expected to understand these rules. They're expected to understand their school's own policies and the state in which they're attending school, their policies. And so there's a lot of nuances there. And they have schools, universities are trying to help by creating groups, people within the athletic department to coordinate all this.
One of the things that makes me think of this policy is, growing up and when I was in college, the big thing was NCAA football.
Yeah, the games on the
video games,
Xbox.
And I remember I was playing NCAA 03 or something like that, or something. Ted Ginn, like it was his rookie year or freshman year. He was like a little DB. No one knew who he was, but you'd use him and you'd just stomp everyone because he was really, really fast, right? But then like Tim Tebow, you could be Tim Tebow and just rock. It was great. Or all these famous college athletes. Well, the company, EA Sports, made a killing on this using these athletes' images, no names. They didn't use their names. However, there were ways that you could download the full actual roster lists and everything, and it would automatically update.
Oh, there you go.
But anyway, it would use their likeness, their image, kind of, and all this. Yeah, exactly. And they would make a killing, and these students received nothing for that. Which that's kind of, I think, a lot of what drove some of this was they were being essentially taken advantage of in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And that is what this rule has essentially tried to close.
Yep. The name, image, and likeness rule, this is what makes up, in legal terms, the right of publicity. So if someone else uses my image, who I am, to make money, I should be entitled to something for that.
Yeah.
So the NCAA's thing, they said, all right, you can now do it, and we've seen this start to happen. So what are some of the things that they use it for? One of the easiest ones is their autograph. So prior to this rule, they couldn't sell their autograph.
Right.
That was their name, and they were making money off of it.
Oh, yeah.
So now they can sell their autographs, develop or use their image for clothing and apparel.
Yep.
So you can have your own Wilson shoe brand.
I've still
high
yet
tops,
to be
low
called.
high tops.
Yep, haven't been called by them yet.
Promote services, TV commercials, those type of things, or you could be hired to make appearances. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Parties. Kids' birthday parties.
There's actually a thing they're using for, I think is a pretty cool concept for nonprofits. Yeah. But yeah, we'll get there too as well. And so in general, the concept here is the NCAA, this has been talked about for a long time. They make billions of dollars for all their basketball, baseball, football, all that stuff. Athletes were getting nothing. And the argument for a long time was, well, they're getting education. And, for D1 athletes, there's a lot of scholarship, full ride stuff. Yeah. And the problem was, great education, but especially when you look at some of those high level, they don't stay all 4 years.
Nope.
So did they really get a complete education?
Right.
Probably not. They didn't get the degree. Some go back finish. But what are they actually getting? And is it compensation for what they're giving up?
Right.
And what the university is getting for them? So
that's a whole different topic for another day, but
yes. But that was part of what drove this.
Yeah.
To get it started.
I almost feel like there should be more requirements of students staying all 4 years till they finish their degree before they would go pro, because of how short the average pro career is very short.
Yeah.
And most sports that you go to college for, even in D1, there isn't a professional equivalent.
No.
Like professional rowing.
That's it. There's the Olympics potentially.
Exactly,
and
but
that's
very unlikely. So Josh, let's talk about the benefits and what these rules bring to college athletes.
Yeah. So the benefits for the athletes really are that they can now get income. And I saw when I was doing this research that depending on the sport, it varied, but they work, I'm going to use air quotes there, they work 30 plus hours a week on their sport in season.
Yeah.
So they're actually they don't have time to earn income like a non-athletic student can get a part-time job and earn some income.
Hey, what are you saying? I'm a non-athletic student.
I'm telling you. But that's, always been the argument. Well, if they want money, why don't they go earn money?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one, time-wise, they're just not capable of doing that. Two, based on all the rules that are there, and that's what some athletes prior to this would get in trouble for, is they would work a job at maybe a car dealership locally, never really show up and get paid, and it was then considered like a booster thing, and there was a violation. And so working became a very tricky issue for a lot of them. And then the other thing as a benefit to this for the student athletes is now it allows them to learn, because if they do go pro, this is going to be something that'll continue on. So it gives them, under probably a little bit stricter framework, the ability to negotiate and learn how to navigate these deals and opportunities within a more strict framework. And then finally, and this is something we'll talk maybe about from a long-term perspective of what's going on in the industry, but it may give a reason why athletes may want to stay longer in college. Because we've seen with a couple athletes that they've noted that as one reason why they're staying is their NIL deals are worth more than their projected starting salary being drafted.
Well, think about some
$2
of these.
million.
A D1 college starting quarterback for a D1 college school is probably easily a six-figure gig as an NIL college student.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, that is definitely taking a little bit of the money off the table. Yeah, six figures, maybe even more.
Yeah.
Who
and
knows?
Say, maybe I will stay a couple extra years.
Yep.
I enjoy doing this, and I'll get paid.
Finish my degree in basket weaving, and then be a professional basket weaver after football's over.
As we get into what the rules are here on the NIL, you'll see too, it cannot be tied to performance. And so if this athlete gets this deal and let's say they don't do as well,
or they get hurt,
they still could potentially still be paid, which would then relieve that burden for them.
So it seems to me that this whole discussion about name, image, and likeness has to have some controversies around it. It can't just be as black and white, right? It's not completely clear.
And I think the NCAA kind of saw this because there's a lot of money floating around. And I mean, there's already all these rules on recruiting, what, coaches can and can't do when it comes to recruiting, boosters, what they're allowed to do, because there's a lot of money. So here's some of the prohibited things for this NIL policy. So for instance, there has to be a quid pro quo, which means it is. It's you hear that a lot. A quid pro quo, which means you're getting something for something.
Yep.
In other words, it can't be some company that really wants to, in a sense, they're a booster for the college sport. They say, hey, I'll give you a $500,000 NIL deal, and I'm not even going to ask you to do anything. It's got to be something for that payment. You got to do something, right? Show up, make an appearance, do social media posts. Something has to happen. It can't be for nothing. No deal or payment can be tied to the performance or achievements. I mentioned that.
Exactly.
So you can't say, I'll give you $100,000, but if you guys win the March Madness,
I'll give you another
$500,000. Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Can't tie it to performance. Also, deals can't be recruiting tools, meaning you cannot offer them a deal if they choose this school. So if you are Nike, and because Nike's over there, they love Oregon.
Yep.
And so they can't say, hey, I'll give you an NIL deal if you come to Oregon, but if you don't, you're not going to get the deal. Right. You can't tie it to a school. And then finally, schools themselves cannot have deals. So you can't have like the Ohio State University paying an athlete a deal to endorse the school. Can't do that.
So these athletes negotiate their NIL deals
with outside entities. Now they've created organizations and groups to kind of have a spot for them to go to, because again, it's just flying all over the place. I don't know how that works.
Probably.
It's more like a site where students can then navigate.
Right.
Now, I will say, from that standpoint too, every school is different. And I mentioned the athlete is the one that's kind of responsible for this. Some schools, like I think the University of Georgia, at least early on, said the athlete can't be wearing a Georgia Bulldogs jersey or have the G that they have kind of trademarked their, that font in your advertisement. Whereas in the same conference, Tennessee says, go for it. Put our T on there. Put our T on there. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And so it may entice a player, because if you're a brand and you're looking at those two choices, I would probably want not only the athlete, but maybe the school that they're attending logo. So maybe I'd give more deals to the Tennessee players if I'm a company than the Georgia players, because although they may be known, if I don't have that Georgia on there, some other people, it may not be as valuable.
Absolutely.
So each school's different, and so you got to kind of keep that in mind. The other thing that's a controversy is there's these things, they're called collectives, which is a group of, I'm going to call them boosters, but it may not be, but in general, a group of businesses, groups of people, entities, they form their own for-profit, or now a lot of times it's a non-profit collective, and they pool to then do an NIL deal. And then their job, in a sense, is to then say, hey, we're going to offer you our collective, you'll get an NIL deal with us, and we'll then use you for other entities. So they're kind of the middleman. Since they're coming together, you may get a bigger deal, but then maybe there's 10 companies in this one group, and you get one deal with them, but all 10 can use your image or likeness or tweets or whatever you want to do. Or, and this is kind of where I thought was a cool thing, they may then say, okay, we're a group of nonprofits. Alone, we wouldn't be able to entice you. But as a group, maybe we can offer you a deal where you'd be enticed. And then as a nonprofit, we could do like celebrity appearances, a golf outing where you would show up and we could utilize you to fundraise, which I think is a cool idea. But the concept there has been a problem because these booster groups have kind of made a fuzzy line in there. Because again, boosters love getting their hands, they got a lot of money to throw around. And so if they can help with recruiting, which goes back to remember those prohibited things, then that can become an issue. So these collectives are now a part of this problem, and we're going to link in the show notes a couple different websites that gave some information on here. But according to the founder and CEO of INFLCR,
Wow,
which
a bunch of letters in a row.
Which is, again, he's talking through these endorsements and stuff. He said these collectives make up 70% of all transactions that happened.
That's a massive
on the
number.
app that is designed to help hold these things together.
Wow.
So they were a big player, especially early on. And it became such a big deal that the NCAA released guidance saying that they would consider anything that's a collective, a group of companies working together, to be in and of themselves a booster, which you're not permitted to be involved prior to them committing.
Yep.
So that goes back to like talking about the high school students. They cannot enter in a deal as a collective with a non-committed athlete. So a high school student, they can't show up a group from Columbus Collective saying, hey, I know you're on the fence between where you're going to go, but you know, Ohio State's a great school, and we got this $500,000 deal floating over here.
Yeah.
Can't happen.
So they're really trying to crack down on these collectives kind of driving the ship, especially with as it relates to recruiting.
Yes.
Because it had been an issue.
Yes. Recruiting's always been an issue. I mean, there's been violations prior to this of just, you know, students coming for a visit and all these different lavish things being given to them, or all of a sudden, oh, look, this new car for your mom and dad showed up, and oh, it's just a gift. Don't worry about it. Yes. And so the NCAA is watching very closely now. And now high school students, again, you know, you got these students who, you know, they're just doing their thing in high school. You have parents who've never dealt with this before, and now they're being kind of bombarded with this. It could be an impact on them long term. They could lose eligibility if they accept a deal and not realize that what they're doing. So there's a lot of kind of wishy-washy there on what's going on.
All right, Josh, we got to take a break.
Yes.
Let's have a dad joke of the week.
All right.
You need to buckle up because this is a good
ready.
one. Why did the tomato turn red?
Why? Well, they're always red, but why
They
would
are always red. No, sometimes they're green.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
But because it saw the salad dressing.
Oh, no. Got to close your eyes.
I know. Got to do
like that.
All right, so we're going to continue discussions about the NIL. Let's talk about the future and what is coming.
Yeah. I think the more things get settled in, you're going to see a couple things. One is that you're going to see that being a deciding factor in where they decide to go.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, it was, do I like the coaches? Which one gives me the most chance if I want to turn pro? Which one runs an offense that pros like? You know, football, you hear about that, the pro-style offense. Yep. You know, may not win a lot of games in college, but they develop good players. Or this is where my dad went, and this is where my grandpa went. I want to go there. All those things. Now, who has a good network? Who has a good network? Because, again, they're not recruiting at this point.
Right.
But you know, because you look at prior players, and you can say, oh, boy, you know, the last two quarterbacks that were at this school got some great deals. Yep. I bet you those opportunities are there for me. Yep. So that'll impact decisions on where to go, which means it's not a pay to play, but the mindset is there that, ooh, man, you know, I may not say this in my recruiting, but maybe they'll just find out that there's some great NIL deals floating around in this because we got a great booster and supporter base.
Absolutely.
The other thing, and this is recent as well, is there's some updates for the transfer rules. So if you move from one school to another, in the past, depending on how or why you moved, you may have to sit out a year. You lose a year of eligibility. Yep. And that was to prevent recruiting of current players from one place to another or jumping ship and moving around. There's always exceptions. They've now streamlined this that athletes have one transfer without a penalty. Yep. In other words, you can transfer once without losing a year eligibility. You can play right away. And those are for NCAA, all the different divisions, and now they're kind of all on one. And they always have exceptions if there's a coaching change or if there is certain things that happen that are outside your control that also allows you to transfer even if you've done the transfer once. Or if there's family reasons, things like that impact, you can always petition.
Can you imagine the demand for a school if Ted Lasso would start coaching? Everyone would transfer in.
They would be all there.
They would be all there. Their NIL deals?
Oh, they'd be all over the place.
Off the charts.
Yes.
Off the charts.
But I think this NIL deal and transfer rule are going to play together. Yeah. Because we actually saw this as one of the articles I was reading. I don't remember which one, but there's been a couple players who either threatened to leave if they didn't get a better NIL deal based on what other players like them were getting,
right?
Or that did move based on a new school seeing other players or recruits getting a good deal.
Yeah.
So there's an overlap between these two rules that is happening.
how is this going to impact college sports in general over the long term?
I think it's going to make it even harder for coaches when it comes to recruiting. They got to be very careful. They're walking a fine line already.
Rules to abide by.
I mean, there's already rules on when you can call, what you can say, how long you can do it. Again, when those transfer, there's a portal that they enter. So if a player says, I'm leaving, they have to tell their current school, has like 2 days to put them in this portal that all the other coaches can look at. And then there's an open window for each season on when you can move. And it's like you see in the draft. Recruiting, though, like, it's just so tricky.
Oh, I know.
Because I'm sure, like, they'll ask questions. Like, athletes want to know. And so I think coaches and the recruiters are going to have a harder time.
Really careful.
And then I think on the other end, too, you're going to see a lot of high school athletes who know they're going to be highly recruited, really build their social media and build their presence.
Yep.
So they're actually more appealing from an NIL standpoint.
Yep.
Is, look at me, I have 100,000 Twitter followers.
And a 4.0 GPA.
Don't you want me as your spokesperson because I already have a large fan base to draw you, right? So I think from both ends, you're going to see from a recruiting side on the universities, it's going to get trickier. On the other side, where players, they were just, up to this point, they were trying to build a good sports presence to say, sports. Look at my highlights, look at what I accomplished. Now it's also this social media.
Money.
What can I do so that recruiters, you saw me play, but I want those NIL people to also see me as a marketing thing. So
you know what I just realized, Josh?
Yes.
You
yes.
and I
yes.
each still have
eligible
4 years of athletic
Let's
eligibility, and we waited until after NIL was a thing. So we can go make some money.
I think I have the bod for curling. I think I have the
and
build
you have the capability
for that.
to grow the beard and mustache or whatever
as quickly as needed
to accommodate.
I can be ready for it. So
maybe that's
some universities
that could be our calling.
That need a curling
Bowling
team.
Green. Have you been curling?
I have.
I've not.
So much fun.
I've not.
Love
we should
it.
do that this next winter.
We should go.
We're going to go curling with
We
our
will.
wives.
Yes, so much fun.
In Bowling Green.
It's so
but
fun.
anyway, I still have my athletic eligibility. I don't see that really happening. Curling could be my only outlet.
Chess.
I just can't keep up. Chess, I keep losing to my wife.
Ah.
I don't think who also has athletic eligibility. So maybe she should get some college chess. So in our final section, before we give our kind of wrap-up thoughts, what should students do, Josh, if they're really considering using this NIL rule for their benefit?
Yeah. There's so much money floating around. Make sure you understand.
Is this taxable money? I'm sure it is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
you'll be employed. You'll get either a 1099 or depending if you're, I don't know if they do contracts versus W-2, probably contract work.
Right.
But yeah, you will have to pay money, taxes on this.
So consider that.
Yeah, taxes. Yeah, don't spend it all.
No.
But understand the rules. What schools am I considering? What do those schools have rules for? What state will I potentially be going to school in? What rules does the state have? And before I commit, what are the things I can and can't do or say? So understand that, because you'd hate to make a decision or do something that drastically impacts your future success. And then 2, when you do write those contracts and get those deals, make sure you have professional help. Make sure there's an attorney looking over those contracts to make sure it makes sense for you. Make sure you have an accountant and a professional financial advisor helping you manage those deals. Because again, a small percentage of student athletes make it professionally. A lot more are going to be probably getting some endorsement deals, all different amounts, but making sure you are taking the best advantage of that opportunity while you have it means ask the right people, have the right help.
So,
yes,
it's time. What are our thoughts? And I'll start.
Yes.
Whew. I've been a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid. And first of all, I felt like I was loaded when I had like $100 to my name.
Yep.
So I really can't imagine coming into a 6-figure deal or a 7-figure deal or whatever this is. I do know that while I have high hopes that I would have done something responsible with it, I probably wouldn't have done all the right things.
Yes.
I don't think that someone at that age and maturity level would make good choices. And you hear about all the, stories of, booze and tattoos and girls and vacations and cars, and that's kind of the things that all the stupid people who go pro in their first year are doing, they can start doing in college now, making rash financial decisions. Where I really think that if you are able to harness some of this, harness your brand, leverage your brand and get paid for it quite well, you can set yourself and your family up for a generation.
Yes.
If you do it right. You are going to be vastly ahead of any peers that you have ever even considered.
Yep.
If you're a little bit wise with your money, if you get this now. So what that means is don't do stupid things, Don't blow it. You can have a little bit of fun with it, but don't blow it. Do smart things. Set money aside for the future now. And oh my goodness, you are just going to be set up. Because, yeah, like you said, few people actually make it pro. And those who do, even fewer, have a long, extended career where they're making a lot of money for years.
Yep.
So you really have to be thinking about the real world and a real future.
Yep.
And this is a good opportunity to set yourself up so you really have no worries. So I would say be smart. Put money to work. Invest your money wisely. Don't go all in on anything. Have a diversified portfolio. Work with an advisor. I mean, shameless plug, if you don't have an advisor, we'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah.
We understand the rules a bit, and this is kind of what we do. So if you have a question about your situation, or maybe you came into some NIL agreements, email us at hello@theinvesteddads.com or check out the Invest With Us tab on our website, because we'd love to help you out, because this is a really tough thing to try and go through alone. I mean, all in all, I can't imagine what I would have done at 19 years old or whatever. So my advice is be smart.
Yep.
What about you?
So I kind of go back and forth. There's certain aspects I like about this. I think, the amount of money that was being made on these athletes without their ability to do anything to earn income, I didn't think was fair for them. But I do think there's a lot of money floating around, and there could be a lot of bad decisions made that could impact them, or just in a sense, they don't take full advantage of. There was a survey done in 2019 by the Hope Center for College, and they looked at student athletes and they asked them some questions, but they found 24% of Division I athletes reported having food insecurity throughout the year. Food insecurity just means that they weren't sure where they were going to be able to eat next, have enough money to eat. And then that Division 2 and 3 were similar, 26, 27%. So again, it happens a lot. That's huge. Just prior to that, the NCAA allowed all Division I schools to provide unlimited meals to athletes. They were limited in actually how much they could provide prior to that, which is weird. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for some lower income families who have kids who are athletes. Sometimes they can't do college even when it's a full ride because there are other obligations that they have and they just can't afford it. So I see a value in this. The other thing that worries me, though, is there's just so much money floating around for people that don't have the morals to take advantage of these young students and offer them deals to do things or lock them up, or for universities to use that for recruiting. So I think in general, it's a good step forward. I think there will be oversight, rules, and regulations. I'd love to see it overseen by a group that can make sure it's regulated better. But in the end, if it keeps them in school, or it keeps them from going straight from high school to a professional sport and allows them to get some education and mature and develop in a more structured setting, I'm all for it. That's really where I'm at.
So here's a question.
Yes.
Does this new rule, does this put things like NCAA football back on the radar in terms of the video game world?
Ooh.
Because that was one of the big disagreements and reasons why it was gone.
Yeah.
It was a big controversy of how much money was being made off these athletes, and they couldn't get anything for it.
Yeah, well, I just don't know if a game developer, if they look at the cost they'd have to pay, they probably have to negotiate the deals with almost everybody, right?
Well, or lump it into a group deal.
Because if you're doing everybody's image, you're gonna have to talk to every athlete, or at least get some sort of deal. It probably seems harder now than it would have been before.
Yeah,
because you just had to get a deal with probably to get the logos of the schools. Yeah. Or with the NCAA, who maybe has the overall rights. But now you have to get every athlete, or maybe you only have a handful of athletes that have their names and likeness. Everybody else is just generic.
Maybe. I don't know. It could be back on the radar. Because remember the cool. There was at the end of the NCAA football game series, which ended when I was in college. You could create yourself and be yourself all the way until
you could
graduation.
Have a career,
and then you could export that file and get drafted into the
NFL one. Yep.
oh, it was the coolest thing, and then the
jack your
next
stats
year,
up.
the
Yeah,
next
the
year
best.
was gone.
Yes.
Because it was too much money, I'm assuming. So anyway, that was fantastic. I learned a lot, Josh. Thank you for doing some research into that. That's a unique, new law that is available to help athletes out nowadays.
I knew about this rule. I never really put to the fact that I've been seeing a lot more athletes in commercials.
Yeah.
You see them in phone commercials now, and this is them taking advantage of that, which is great. So I thought that was just, now that I'm aware of it, I'm seeing it more.
So until next week, stay tuned. Keep your eye on the NIL space because it does change all the time. And as we mentioned earlier, we'd love it if you'd subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and just keep listening. If you had someone asking what NIL was or how they could make money or what to do if someone does, send them this episode and it might help them out.
That's right.
All right, until next Thursday, have a great week.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Invested Dads podcast. This episode has ended, but your journey towards a better financial future doesn't have to. Head over to theinvesteddads.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and we had a positive impact on your life, leave us a review, click subscribe, and don't miss the next episode. Josh Robb and Austin Wilson work for Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. All opinions expressed by Josh, Austin, or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. There is no guarantee that the statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses which would reduce returns. Securities investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment plan or strategy will be successful.